Wow, wow. Wow, wow. We're live, day 21. I'm late, but that's okay. Tonight, we are going to talk about air-to-water intercoolers, more specifically, air-to-water intercooler positions. I want to get your guys's, and that's going to be our poll for tonight. It's already up. Just make sure that I don't forget. Sometimes I forget the polls, but I want to find out, I want to get your take on, should I move the air-to-water intercooler from under the hood? You know, I'm always, Richard, you're always talking about getting cold air to stuff. So why on earth would you have an intercooler under the hood? That's me talking to myself. So it's going to be you guys talking to me as well as me talking to you guys. So here's the thing. The Sprint Turbo that I'm doing as a Bonneville project, I also ran it at the MAXTON mile. And when I first bought it, obviously the way they come from the factory, it has an intercooler, but it has an air-to-air intercooler. It has a little opening like at the base of or at the where the hood closes, the seam for the hood, and then the front fascia has a little duct going there, or it's just an opening really. I made a little plate and shelf and everything to try to make sure we directed air to it. Quite honestly, I don't know that it got a lot of airflow given the high pressure area under the hood. I just don't know if that's going to work. But it did have an intercooler. And one thing I know, and as a side note, one thing I do know about intercoolers is it is surprising how well they work, even when you don't have a ton of flow or a ton of water through them. Like on the air-to-water intercooler that we use on Jimmy's Tahoe, we drove around with just whatever residual water it had in it, because we hooked when we were doing the dyno testing, we hooked the hose up to it, because we didn't yet, on that first test, we didn't have the circulation pump and the reservoir and all that to have that plumbed while we were driving around. And yet it still worked pretty good as an intercooler. And that's also something that I saw when I was doing dyno testing at West Tech, is we would just shut the water flow off. The water still had intercooler. I mean, the intercooler still had water on it, but nothing was flowing. And so I made a couple of runs to heat it up, and then I ran it, and it's not as good as having flowing water through it. And certainly if you stayed on the gas and continued to have hot boosted air going through that, you would heat it up. But, except at Bonneville or the Silver State or something like that, where you'd be running sustained like that, it still works pretty well as an intercooler. I'm surprised, because I get lots of comments about a lot of things, because it's social media. But you get a lot of comments like, oh, you don't have anywhere near, I got this a lot from the air-to-air intercooler guys, you don't have anywhere near enough airflow for that to really show what it's supposed to be doing. Well, you don't have any airflow when you're stationary, when you're launching in a quarter-mile run or whatever. So you don't have that. So you don't have it then. You have lots of airflow at 100 or 150 or 200 miles an hour, however fast your thing goes. You might have more airflow then. And so, do you take the average amount? Do you take climbing amount? What do you do? All that. So I've had this conversation with people. Same thing with an air-to-water intercooler. Like, how much flow do you need to actually dissipate the heat? Like when you do a pull, it's just running the temperature of whatever the system water is, and then you cool it back off with a heat exchanger. If you have ice water, you just run ice water, which we have on lots of stuff, and you just run whatever's in that reservoir. Luckily on the dyno, and when we were on the dyno at West Tech, and also the dyno at Jimmy's place, where we were just running well water through it, and we would shut it off when we're not making runs, and then just turn it on when we made a run. And so we had plenty of water. In fact, running the amount of water that we ran through there, and given its temperature, it's just way more than you need. Same thing at West Tech. I have lots of water flow going through there, but it's not. It would do exactly the same thing with way less water flow than that. But everybody wants this overkill thing. But I got those comments a lot. Hey, you didn't do that enough. You didn't run enough air. You didn't run enough water. There's too much temperature rise. Whatever the things are. So on the Sprint, what I did was, the air-to-air intercooler is not great, particularly if you turn like I did, you turn the boost up and you get more temperature, and in a standing mile run, you're on the gas a lot, way more than a quarter mile, and way more than you think. It's not 4 times as long. It's actually way longer than that, because it takes a lot longer to accelerate, through the other parts of it. But even with that, what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a more efficient intercooler system. So I made an air to water. You can see it in the thumbnail. I have an air to water. I made a whole system there where we had a good size core, which I think is more than enough for what I would be doing even in this next program. I think that the intercooler itself is more than enough, but it is positioned kind of like the air to air was, only because I wanted to make it fit with the existing hoses, like the factory tubing that went to the intercooler and went from the intercooler into the stock throttle body. If I was going to make my own hoses, we could have put it wherever I wanted, but it fit nicely there. And we used the factory hoses, and so it was all Super Sano. But we made a reservoir for it and had a pump, had a secondary heat exchanger, because when we were making runs like at the MAXTON mile, and when I go to Bonneville, we'll use ice water, and I'm going to use an even bigger reservoir, put it in the back like we did for the Civic. I'll use an even bigger water reservoir, like 5 gallons or something like that. It's more than enough for that. We ran 10 gallons on the Civic, and it was making 2.5 times the power that we're going to make in the Sprint. So it's not going to be a problem. When we ran the Civic, we had like a 10-gallon cell, filled it full of ice, put a little bit of water in there, let it circulate and cool the thing off and get going. We, quite honestly, because we didn't even see boost in this thing in the Civic while we were making runs, we didn't even see boost until the top of 4th gear, where we were able to actually put power down. In the Sprint, we'll see that a lot earlier because we don't have as much power, and we'll be able to put power down. Because let's face it, it doesn't have as much power. I mean, it starts out at 70, but we should get it somewhere between 200 and 250 when we run it. But even then, and then the boost pressure will be, high-ish, 20 pounds or something would be nice. It should make good power at that boost level. But we'll have the air-to-water intercooler. We'll have ice water. We have also, when I ran it before, we had a cold air intake. It's very important to have cold air to start things out with. And this concept that people have intercoolers so you can have an open element filter with the hood closed, they've never taken temperatures, obviously, because that's not a thing, especially with an air-to-air intercooler that's using, at the very best, ambient air to cool that. That's not good. But with ice water, obviously, you can cool it off even more, but you don't want to start it out with hot air going into it and then compress it, make it even more, and then have the intercooler try to take all of that out. It's just better to start out with it cold. If you start out with something cold, there's more oxygen molecules to start out with, and then, more in the resulting thing. So the question is, we have cold air going in, we have a fairly efficient turbo, we have an air-to-water intercooler, and we have ice water. So we're picking nits here. So knowing that, we also have the air-to-water intercooler under the hood. Now, the reservoir is not going to be there. The pump's not going to be there. But the intercooler itself is there under the hood, where, because we have a turbo motor, there's going to be lots of hot stuff. At least the intercooler is going to be off to the side and a little bit back beyond where the turbo is, and the exhaust is going under that. We probably will wrap the downpipe section. Again, just, less heat. Right now, the tubes that are on it, or the discharge coming out of the turbo and then from the intercooler going into the intake manifold, is rubber. So of all the things, it might even be better than steel tubing or aluminum tubing in terms of, containing the heat or transferring heat from the outside hotter engine compartment to the charge air that would be in there. Certainly after the intercooler, the charge temperature going through that tube section is going to be way less than whatever the ambient temperature is. So the question is, for you guys, let me know, should the intercooler itself, which is under the hood in this heated environment, should that be moved? Like, I can move that up in front of the radiator. I mean, we can move it anywhere. I can move it inside the car. We see that a lot on some of the drag cars. They have the big intercooler sitting kind of, the passenger seat. We've done that before on Bonneville cars too, when Tom was helping me out. We can put it there, just away from, kind of away from the heat. You just run a longer length of tubing. Honestly, if we put it up in front, which I think that there's room, we would shield it from the radiant heat from the turbo, obviously, and it wouldn't be under the hood, and it would be getting cold air, ambient air at Bonneville, whatever that is, probably would be its coolest position there. But the question is, yeah, it probably is ideal there. But would that make any difference? You know, is that going to make any difference with a dedicated cold air source to the turbo, a good air-to-wire intercooler, ice water? Are we worried about nothing? Because we see this, I see this a lot where people want to talk about dimpled pistons or rod ratio or things like that. When and all of that's good and worthy of testing, but not as your major focus when you're talking about, I'm putting together a turbo LS and I'm worried about these things. Those are way too far down the list to worry about. And so is it one of those things? Is it something that's not even a concern, or just do it because it's the right thing to do? And you have to put it somewhere. And right now it doesn't have a mount on it. It's just kind of sitting there on stuff held up by the clamps and stuff. The other nice thing that I like is it has a tile blow off valve that recirculates right now. I'm not going to have to do that because we don't have a mass air meter. We don't have a vane meter. We have speed density. It's just going to blow to atmosphere. Which will be cool. Make funny noise, like put a little whistle on it, or a duck call or something, you know, whack whack. It could do duck noises every time the blow off valve actuates. So that would be cool. So let me know in the comments, and for the folks at home that are watching this after it's a live feed, let me know what you guys think. Should it be moved? It's very easy to do it because the radiator that I will use, I probably won't use this factory radiator. For one, I don't know what kind of shape it's in. And for another, I'm just going to use probably one of these, I call them half cores for a Honda Civic. They're readily available. They're easy to get. They're cheap. Lots of places have them. We started out using a full length radiator in the Bonneville car and then immediately switched down to the half length one. Because they had the AC condenser there on the factory stuff. But even the small radiator, even at 500 or 550 horsepower at the tire, the thing ran just ice cold. It was fine. So that intercooler or that radiator for this intercooled application it'll easily cool a Civic. I mean, easily cool the Sprint. If it will cool a Civic that makes twice as much power. And so that won't be a problem. We'll put a electric fan on it, and so that won't be an issue. And we'll block off most of the other stuff like we did with the Civic, where we basically fence everything in except for where we're ducting cold air into the air inlet system. But we'll duct and channel everything, so all the air that comes in through the openings in the front of the car, which have to be, depending on what class we're in, some of them will be covered, some of them will not, but it will duct all the air through the radiator. And once you're at speed, like you're going 150 miles an hour, you have lots of cooling airflow going through it. So when we were in the Civic, we were going 226 or 227. We kept making the opening smaller and smaller because it just would not ever heat up. So as we make that opening smaller and smaller, we improve aero in the front of the car. So we're going to lower the car and do all that stuff, but it'll be cool. So I'm just curious what you guys have to say. See what's going on. It's going to be a great chat. Looking for learning something. There's lots of good stuff to talk about with intercoolers. And as I always like to do, we talk about the big things and then we narrow it down to little things. And maybe the thing that I'm thinking of is moving that. I'm probably going to move it anyways because I have to put it somewhere, and I think it would be better just to put it somewhere where it's out of the way. But it's definitely not high on the like intercooler. Yes. Air to water intercooler. Yes. Ice water. Yes. And then position is like one of the last things on that list. Do you have do you have enough water flow? Like you don't have to have Niagara Falls flowing through there. It doesn't have to be that because that's way more than you need and then could be problematic, but you just have to have enough. Like if you have enough and then you go to the point of beyond enough, the beyond enough doesn't really add anything. It doesn't really help you out. So as long as we could keep the charge temperature low, we're all good. Get some. What's going on? Good to see you. Away from the heat and more inline coolers. Cooling for coolers. Yeah, on the Bonneville car, we won't have a secondary heat exchanger. We will only have big reservoir, ice water, circulation pump, up to the intercooler core and back. It won't have any secondary heat exchanger because a secondary heat exchanger is just going to be a heater in this case. It won't take the temperature away the way that the ice does. In fact, what we did on the reservoir for the Civic is when it came back in, we didn't have it just come back in through a single pipe, because what that tended to do was isolate the hot air and or the hot water, separate the hot water from the cold water. So it would go into its own area. And if this area was where the feed was for the pump, then it would just suck hot water. And so what we did was kind of make a sprinkler system for the return. So it sprinkled all of the hot water over the full width and length, the full surface area of the ice. And so as it went past all of that, it cooled it all back off. And then so the water was always cold. No matter where you took a temperature reading for the water, it was always cold. I don't know that we'll have to do that on the, we'll see on the Sprint. It might not be as big a problem, but it's really easy. Like the sprinkler system was just a tube with a bunch of holes drilled in it. So it wasn't like it was really difficult to make. Diving off the deep end with my Firebird small block Chevy 350. Nice. If weight isn't an issue on a Bonneville car, idea use an electric car AC compressor, extra heavy duty group, 31 truck batteries, and an intercooler for max charge cooling. Yeah, we don't need to go much cooler than what ice water is going to do. And I don't want to put batteries and that sort of stuff. Still amazed the intercooler works. I would have thought the pull from the AC compressor would cost power. Well, it definitely does. The AC is definitely going to cost power. It just may be that it's a net gain, that it adds more than you lose from that. If I put the custom headers with cat back 2.5 inch and made air intake and throttle body 80 millimeter on my engine 462 valve, can I get horsepower in the 300 horsepower range? Is it otherwise all stock? And is it a late PI 2 valve? And is there anything else going on with it? I think a PI is about 300 with headers and an inlet tube. And so the way that we run it on the engine dyno, it's about 300 already. How about CO2? We don't want to run CO2 in it. Are you talking about using it for cooling? CO2 jets on your forced induction window? What are we wanting to do with the CO2? CO2 would be a good idea on cooling an air-to-air intercooler, but not a good idea for air-to-water. Trying for 6,000 RPM and 450 wheel horsepower. Cam's a 230. Or more wet shot or low boost. Yeah, I was going to say 450 at the tire from a small block Chevy is going to be a tall order. And it's going to take a lot more cam than that. But with nitrous, it's not going to be hard. Or boost, it's not going to be hard. Run 2 intercoolers, one before and one after. The intercooler before the turbo is not a good idea. It'll be restrictive for the turbo. You thought about compressed air supercharging? Yeah, we had those guys on already. And I've already talked to them about that. Carl's just not sure that we could run it for as long as we need to run it without the thing super cooling some of the things and creating problems. I run oversized heat exchanger before the intercooler and a smaller heat exchanger after with a nice aeromotive pump. 3/4 hoses works great. 5 degrees above ambient at cruise. What are you running at 25,000 RPM? My Sprint was near ambient temperature under cruise with no boost going through it. It's pretty easy to get it there. And my reservoir, which made this harder, but it was plastic, so it didn't transfer heat very much from under the hood. It is a good insulator, but my reservoir was under the hood, and it shouldn't have been. That's not ideal, but we happened to we bought a gas can when we were at the MAXTON mile and used that as our thing, and it worked. But and so because it worked and I bungee corded it down, that became permanent, and I drove it around like that. Planning on putting a water tank inside a traditional cooler, then I can keep adding ice around the aluminum tank inside. I have an Orca cooler with a drain I'll probably use. Okay. Would actually revert back to exhaust manifolds for that turbo application. Headers become useless when scavenging exits the tuning frequency, especially with only 2 valves per cylinder. I would revert back to exhaust manifolds. Turbos don't become useless. Where would you move it to? In front of the grill? Well, it won't be in front of the grill, but it'll be in front of the radiator. My truck weight's around 3,500 pounds. How much power do I need to push high 8s or 9s? Does anybody have a thing for them? I don't have a slide rule there, but there's a, if you go to Wallace Racing, they have horsepower, they have compression calculators, they have displacement calculators, they have power versus mile an hour calculators. They have all that stuff. So go to Wallace Racing and you can put in the calculator and it'll tell you what you need. One of the problems with those kinds of calculators is they usually default at a pretty good, like 60-foot time. So you have to be able to hook the thing up in order to do the mile an hour in ET with that vehicle weight and some horsepower level. Most guys know that if it says, hey, I only need 690 horsepower to do this, and they've got 750 and they aren't doing it, it's usually because they don't have enough traction. Usually they can't run a 150, 60-foot time to be able to get it to do the other things. Also, you recommend a 4-link or just traction bars for street strip build? You could get away with traction bars, but I don't know what application that is. Seeing guys that would take a flexible copper tube used to hook it up to dishwashers and loop it inside an ice box, so connecting both ends with AN fittings so your ice doesn't mix with coolant. We don't run coolant in this air to water intercooler. We just run water, and it has a separate sealed system. It's not part of the cooling system for the engine. It's behind the radiator, probably not cooling as well. Yeah, if you look at the photo of the Sprint thing, that right now it's under the hood. It's under the hood behind the radiator. It's where the engine is. In fact, it's right on top of the engine, to the right of it a little bit. 1,000 wheel horsepower get you 9s. Yeah, I think it would get you better than 9s. Probably low 9s. How's our poll doing? Should I move the air to water intercooler from under the hood on the Sprint Turbo for Bonneville? 6634. I'm thinking I should. I did get my bushing and for the shifter, and it's good. Looks like it's gonna work. So tomorrow I'm gonna bolt in my shifter. Wow. I can go out and make turbo sprint noises. Wing, 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 wing. It's not overpowering. So I have an option between an independent front suspension setup on my F-150 and a 4-link traction bars, or an IRS setup, all S550 components. It sounds to me like you're making it really complicated. Is that what your plan is? Do you want to do that? Oh, everyone having a good weekend? Where's my pizza guy? I had pizza tonight, so I was excited about coming on and talking about my pizza. Pizza. And yes, it was Little Caesars. Because that was cheap. Said 884 on Wallace. Okay. Yeah, again, that's even the slide rules that they do are with, like I said, with optimized traction. They're like, hey, look, this stock eliminator motor runs this with 502 horsepower. Yeah, but it's perfect. Everything is perfect on it. Most combinations are not like that. I remember running the supercharged Mustang that I had that was set up for road racing, because it was the Bridgestone Supercar Series, and that's the Mustang that we were running. I had a supercharged 302 in it, and it made really good power, and it went like I don't know, 1280s or something like that, but at like 130 something miles an hour. I remember I raced a guy, he really got out on me because I was just sleeping at the tree. This is at Terminal Island when it was open, because we were taking the car to the Long Beach Grand Prix, because the Bridgestone Supercar Series was a support series for the Indy cars. So I got to race there, which was fun. But I was racing the thing on the Bridgestones at the drag strip track. And these Bridgestones are terrible. I mean, not terrible. They're probably good street tires, but they're just street tires. And that's why we called them stones, because they were just hard as a rock. And we put like GSCSs or BFG TAR1s back in the day on it, and they were several seconds a lap faster. So they were much better tires. But we had to race on these because it was the series sponsor. But running them at the track, it was like really hard to put power down. And a centrifugally supercharged 302 is not notorious for having like lots of torque. But it was a stiff suspension set up for road racing with those tires, and those are all my excuses. But the guy took off on me, and it was it might have been a little rotary thing or whatever. But I charged him down, like freight train past him. He came over. He said, "Oh my God, what do you have in that thing?" He goes, "I can't believe." I said, "Yeah, it charges pretty good on the big end." He said, "What mile an hour do you run?" I said, "I don't know, it was 134 or 5 or whatever." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that explains it." Chicken parm for dinner, nice. Margaritas are good. Panda Express, excellent. We go to, even when we have another Chinese restaurant that we go to, but we go to that Chinese restaurant to get Chinese takeout stuff if we go get it. But then we go over to Panda Express to get the chow mein from Panda Express because I like it better. It also said the center would run high 10s and the best is 13.2. That's right there. That's close, right? A 1090 is the same as a 13.2. And your 1320 videos and your 1400 horsepower roll race car runs 11 to the drag strip. Just don't know if it's worth going with. There's the guy that owns a 351 that has all around independent suspension, but he does roll racing stuff. I don't know if I need to go all out or not. My suggestion would be not to do any of that suspension stuff and just get it running and get it driving around. And then if you go, what this thing really needs is an independent front suspension or an independent rear suspension, but do it while your project car is running. Had seafood for dinner, a place called Mr. and Mrs. Krabs. Mr. Crab, Mr. and Mrs. Crab. Is his first name Eugene from SpongeBob? $64.36 was really good. That's good. Phil and Tina, what's going on? What's a good word? I keep wanting to say Milo and Maya. So, still remembering those guys. Brady and Bruno took them over swimming today, and they just loved it. I went to see, my mom lives close by, and so we went over and let them in the back, and they go tearing off in. We got tennis balls over there, so they could chase the tennis balls. They're just in heaven. Brady just lays down on the front step. He's like, "Oh, this is so good. It's so hot." They were just digging it, though. Just happy to go and be dogs. It's awesome. And it's hot enough that it would be good. I can maybe work on the Sprint tonight. That would be good. Or get up really early when it's still cool enough. Get that shifter on. See if the shifter works, and if it does, I can get all the rest of the stuff together. I'm excited. I need to see if I have, I don't think I do. Maybe I bought some. I need to see if I have the snap ring pliers, because there's a snap ring. I might be able to get it out with a screwdriver or something. We'll see. I have a pick. I can make something work. I got to get there's a little there's a little bushing that needs to come out. It's got a little receiver groove for the snap ring. So once I get that out, we're good. Bolt all that stuff up. Full race. Well, 10.5 to 1 be safe with an iron head, small block Chevy. On an NA motor? Yeah, try to keep the water temperature down. You asked last night if I was putting my LQ4 on the engine dyno, and my answer is yes. I'll use your numbers as a baseline to see how close my tune is. Are you running it with a factory ECU or something? And where are you putting it on the dyno at? And I can't remember what the combination is. Is it going to have headers on it? Are you going to run it with electric water pump and stuff? Give me some deets, yo. Give me all the good stuff. Right now, I want you guys to know how important you are. Right now, Major League 2 is on. And I'm choosing to do this instead of watching Major League 2. And I don't know what happens at the end because I've only seen that, I don't know, 30 or 40 times. Bob Uecker was amazing. Got to take the puppies for a ride. They like the air conditioning. Bruno 6's face right in front of it. Same price for flat or dome pistons will be a power adder. I would put flat tops in it. I wouldn't put a dome piston. Channel 199 did a minivan race. What's Channel 199? Chad was telling me about a deal that they did. I think that they did Nissans. Diesel 14.6 liters went from 78 millimeter to a 91 millimeter. Were you running both of those as a compound, or did you just do a different turbo on it? What's my knowledge on K-Series stuff? Other than the book that I wrote on it? Centrifugal versus turbo. Do most people do turbo because of costs? I've only run centrifugals over the years. No, that's not why they do cost. Or cost is not why they do it. Have you seen the videos that I have up where we compare the different superchargers and turbos all in the same motor? If you look at that, it will tell you why guys do that. Travis Pastrana's YouTube. Yes, with Tuner Pro, a local speed shop, 42-pound injectors, Trailblazer SS, low buck truck, no headers, stock ECM. So you're going to hook a stock ECM up on the engine dyno? So do you have a harness set up so that you can just put power and ground to it and stuff? Here's a question. I have a Holly. And do you have it set up with a map sensor, or are you still running the mass error? We ran the mass error up to 500 or 550 at the tire. But now Jimmy and Joel were doing testing today and doing the 3-bar map sensor so that when we want to go beyond where we are, we're going to be able to. Here's a question for you. I have a Holley EFI Super Sniper with a Holley Hyperspark distributor. I don't have the Holley 3-pin connector with the distributor. They want $47 for it. Can you make your own? I don't know. I'd have to look at that and see what it is. I don't know why you couldn't if you have do you have the plugs for it though, for both ends? Because if it's just wiring and 2 plugs, that seems like pretty simple. That's like just doing a weather pack kind of thing. I still want to do a K24 Crown Victoria. Okay. I didn't know you wrote a book on it. Yeah, I wrote 3 books on Hondas, and one of them was K-Series. The other 2 were B and D series. Flat gets 9.5. Yeah, that's what I would do. Particularly if you're going to run power adder on it. You don't need the extra point of compression to put you, especially if you're running it on pump gas, you don't need the extra point of compression because it's not doing anything for you that you need, because you could just add a little bit more nitrous and make up for that. I mean, it's going to be 3 or 4%. So you're talking about 10 horsepower or 12 horsepower or whatever. If you're adding nitrous, that's just a little bit bigger jet, not very much. And if it's a turbo, that's not even 1 pound of boost, but it gives you a bigger tuning window. So I would, and a flat top is a better piston design than a dome piston is. Being honest, I don't know much about my friend's Prestige. Peck suggested you as the first time hearing about you. Oh yeah, we called him Admiral, but yeah, now he's Prestige is good. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. I know a bit about K-Series. Yeah, Edward, if you have the wires and plugs for it, and it's just a 3-plug or 3-wire thing, that's not hard. Learn to drive stick in a B16 CRX. Nice. What's the name of the video? What the name of the video for what? The best one to look at is go to the channel, go to the playlist, and go to Modular Ford forced induction turbo blower, whatever the name of that grouping is, and in there, that's where it will be. If you do a search for Modular Ford turbo, it probably will come up. 5.5 hours from West Tech. Where are you residing? I'm not 5.5 hours from West Tech. I'm 450 miles from West Tech. Yeah, flat tops in the cart now. Are you doing it 30 over Turbo Centra? Haven't ironed out all the details yet. That was all Phil and Tina's channel. That's always the problem with me, was like way back we did this. We did the Honda like that. We ran a factory harness that somebody did for us. I can't remember who did it. We had part of a factory Honda harness so that we could run Honda. We also did it. I think Tom also hooked up one of the aftermarket setups. I'm thinking it was probably a Fast, maybe. But we were able to do it with a Honda. Back then, I had an S100 and then an S200 and then an S300. And the S100 was chip burning, so it was a little bit more time consuming, but it still got the job done. Met a guy on Facebook, and we've been friends for a little while now. He's helped me out with a lot of stuff. Cool. Richard, I just bought an 87 square body pickup. Want to make 350 to 400 horsepower. How much would it cost me to make my horsepower goal with a 350 TBI compared to swapping in a 4.8 or 5.3? Well, the first thing I would talk you out of is using a TBI. I don't necessarily want to talk you out of a 350 because you can make good power with that. But if you do a 350, you're going to have to put, to make 400 horsepower, you're going to have to put heads, cam, and intake on it. Don't try to do it with a throttle body injection. If you're going to do it with fuel injection, do it with an aftermarket intake manifold on it. A 5.3 just needs a cam. So I don't know which one of those is easier for you to swap in or whatever, but it's a lot less expensive to do it probably with a 5.3 than it is with a 350, having to buy heads, cam, and intake manifold and a distributor and a carburetor, unless you are going to run it fuel injected. Stock bore 4030, bore size on all this stuff. Okay, that's the common over bore size. Yeah, I'm a ways away from West Tech. it's a long haul. It's a lot longer when you're coming up on 30 hours of no sleep, and then you have that drive ahead of you. It's challenging. You could make it in 5.5 hours. You just have to drive really fast. I don't really do that in the truck. I drive it and think, yeah, made it again. Lots of cheap swap meet parts for 350s. Yeah, there's stuff on eBay and stuff, but heads are not going to be cheap. I mean, they're not going to be like thousands and thousands of dollars, but they're not going to be hundreds of dollars. I drive truck. Yeah. So you know what it's like. It's nice to, I was just thinking about that today as I was driving through town, having to stop at all stoplights. I'm like, I really like being out on the freeway and not stopping. I like going, no stoplights, no people, no parking lots, none of that stuff. Just go. Just me out on the open road. I've always been pretty good at adept at like long distance driving. Tires don't last long in my truck. Is it because you're spinning them all the time? I need to, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I need to put the front tires in the back and the backs in the fronts on the truck. To your knowledge on BMW stuff like the N54, that's a motor I want to build and don't really know what car I should go with. And there's a 3 Series I like and a 1 Series. All of that's good. But a BMW inline 6-cylinder works really good. It has a good cylinder heads. The problem with having them in the BMW chassis is that there's limited room, like physical room, for some of the turbo stuff. So it doesn't fit very well because they have the motors kind of leaned over. But the motors can make a lot of power. Do you happen to know with the minimum? Are you talking about the oil flow to the turbo for a remote turbo? I don't know what that number is. The block is 60 over and rusty. Can it be rebuilt? Well, how rusty is it? How much will it take to clean it up? And what kind of block is it? Yeah, I don't know what those numbers are. So following that, could it be swapped in my truck? Anything can be swapped into anything. It's just, do you want to do that? Do you want to go through all that's required to do a weird swap? To put, like, how many people have put a BMW N54 with that transmission and the fuel injection and a turbo and all the other things that you need for that? How many people have put that in your kind of truck? So you might be the only guy that's done that. So that means you're going to have to make stuff. My E46, there's a room for a turbo, especially for a bottom line. Yeah, it's just really, really tight over there to the, I don't want to call them frame rails. Chrysler 340. I don't know that I would go more than 60 on that. You can sleeve it and then you could go a standard bore if you want. It's not cheap though. I used one of the Amazon oil scouting pumps for 2 years. My rear mount setup, it's been pretty efficient. Okay. Whatever the seals on the turbos will hold. I got Admiral for help. There you go. He's a good guy. Yeah, I don't think I would have been the person to go 60 on that 340. 30, 40, it's probably okay. I'd be curious to see what you could have the thing sonicked and find out how much is left. An LS will fit my Sentra. Then you need an aluminum one in there, right? I saw an LS in a Celica. What's the craziest swap build you've done? I don't do those. I have built, helped Tom build Bonneville cars but none of them are swaps though. As long as you have a tank for the turbo to drain in, you won't have any issues using an old scavenge pump. I have a 3-quart drain tank. That's a good idea. My testing is on the dyno. I mean, technically the motor that we used in the Civic was a swap because it was a B18 and not a B16, but that's really the same thing. The Sprint had a factory motor. Both of the VWs, the GSR, which all the Honda guys think GSR, but that was a Beetle name, turbo 2-liter or whatever, and then the Jetta was a smaller one. I think that was a 1.5 with a hybrid deal. The Suzuki was 2.4, I think. Suzuki Kizashi. I like that. I like the way that thing looked. I like the way it drove too. It was nice. And it just went out and did its thing. Swap. Admiral and I were talking about swapping a 351 into a Corvette. That's fine. The problem with the 351, and somebody brought this up the other day, was not as many intake manifolds available for those as there are 302s. Got it at an estate sale. 340 blocks are getting hard to find. Cletus shows you can put a big block in a Spark, so anything's possible. No, you can. I mean, guys put big blocks in Nash Metropolitans and, all kinds of stuff. So, that's where the Zinger stuff goes. That goes way back to the 60s, I think. Holy makes a great higher M LS style for a 351. They do, yeah. But for a lot of guys, that's not hood friendly. And it fits sideways. There you go. Does anybody watch I'm sure everybody does, the Bigfoot vlogs on social media? They're good. I think people will start getting tired of them if they're not already. But that's something I think Garrett needs to do. Cletus needs to do that. Needs to do an AI version of a superhero giraffe, like a really buffed one. And that could be him. And then he could be doing all of those things that the Bigfoot guys are doing. But he would just be doing like his life, flying helicopters and saving people and swamp boats and big block Sparks and all that stuff. So a lot of that stuff, I mean, it would be AI, but it wouldn't even have to be made up because his life is like that anyways. But it needs to be him as like, instead of one of these jacked like big feet, it needs to be him as a giraffe. It would be awesome. But a 400 horsepower 5.3 torque curve would be similar to a 400 horsepower 350 small block. It wouldn't be different enough that you would be concerned about it. Adam LZ's MR2 with the Steve Morse big block sounds amazing. True, I guess it would be a problem with the vet and deck height and whatnot. Yeah, it's a tunnel arm's not going to fit under the hood of a Corvette, obviously. What's your thoughts on 2-bolt main 350s? I don't worry about horsepower and 2-bolt mains. You're fine. I got both a 340 and a complete 273. Cool. Don't forget 40 Anglias, big blocks and 871 blowers. Yeah, that's what I was telling Dan. Is the old, that's where all the Zinger stuff came from. They had I think they had like the bubblegum and cards and stuff that you could get those that, they had the Z28 with a giant blown thing sticking out of the wood. It was just basically mostly motor. And a lot of models back then were like that too. Not the curvy models, but the car models. And is the video referring to for turbo or supercharger on a 2-valve modular Ford? No, it's on a 4-valve modular Ford. On the intercooler, always move to the trunk, large lines in and out, and a remote pump. Yeah, we're not going to do it in the trunk. The intercooler will be more than likely up in front of the radiator. Yeah, the rat fink stuff. Partitioned away from all the heat in the engine bay. But the reservoir will be back there, though. that will be remotely mounted. Yeah, rat fink stuff. That's the same kind of thing. Same thing as zingers. You know, some guys mount the intercoolers in the, we were talking about in the earlier, like on the passenger seat area, that kind of thing. We did that in one of the Bonneville cars. Have you ever participated in Power Tour? I haven't. Jimmy and I were talking about doing one of these drag and drive things, which we thought would be fun. We want to do it in his NSX as soon as he gets it together with the, he has a K series trans and adapter that he's putting together so that that transmission will take the kind of power that he's going to make, because it's probably in the mid sevens right now at the tire with the turbo that he has, but he's going to put a G42 on it, so it could be more than that by quite a bit, by 300 horsepower or something. And he wants to not break it when he's drag racing. Not break the transmission anyway. But it would be cool. We're kind of responsible with big engines and newer cars. The GT class of super stockers and rear-wheel drive conversion cars. I sold a 2-volt main will hold around 500 crank horsepower with ARP studs. That's nowhere near as much power as it will hold. Sorry, I was late. I just got done porting 782 heads for a 2.5 liter T1 log swap. Oh, really? You were doing 2.2 stuff? That's cool. Or 2.5 stuff. Why are you putting the log manifold, like a T1 log, on a 2.5? And are you porting the manifold? I'd sure like to see how well that works. So I can go for 500 wheel horsepower. Yeah, you don't worry about the power output. You're fine. The main's not going to drop. The main are not going to drop out of there. You're not going to force them out from power. That's not really a thing. I know a stock 5 liter won't hold up 17 pounds of boost. We've run that on a Fox before successfully, but we did it with a Pro Charger, not a Pro Charger, a Paxton. I do know that a small block Chevy for circle track racing has limited about 600 horsepower before it'll break the main webbing out. Is that on a 2-bolt deal, Dan? And that's racing it around. Broke the lifter valley. Well, the 5 liter block split up from the main webbing up to the cam tower, up to the cam tunnel. Usually is what happens. Splayed Cat 4 bolts. But that's as much as they last, is 600 horsepower. We've run a lot more than that on the dyno. But we're not racing it, though. We don't race dynos. We just idle them. Okay, should I move the air-to-water intercooler? 63% saying yes. Yes, move it. Why are you talking about it? Why don't you be about it? What pertinent? What turbo was on that 2.5? Ellis says the cheapest, most readily available race engine ever. Manifold cut open and ported glass smooth. Plenum increased 3 inches. Looks like a mailbox. The exhaust manifold is like that, or the intake manifold? Thoughts on Summit 8803 cam? A 10.5 NA 383 with AFR 195s. I don't know what the specs are on that. 2-bolt might take more if you have billet caps. That's my theory. All right. I have removed the center main cab on the Sentra at 25 pounds. Did you detonate it? Circle track racing is hard on stuff. Yeah. When guys are circle track racing, how hard are they on and off the throttle? Are they gentle roll on, or is it like stabbing? I don't know. I've never watched that from the inside. Bent Craig, bad tune. Yes, bad. Okay. That definitely will do it. You don't even have to be running 25 pounds of boost. Detonation will definitely hurt that. 224, 232. Yeah, that'll be fine. It's I'm thinking that's a dual plane manifold and like a 750 or something. Bad lean on methanol. Okay. Log intake using the TBI NA exhaust manifold. Oh, okay, that's good. Chrysler flange welded on TBI header. Oh, cool. I think I have one of those. That's a much better exhaust manifold than a much better exhaust manifold than the stock T1 exhaust manifold with the turbo on it. I'm curious why you would put the log style intake manifold on it though. Does it have to fit something that it otherwise doesn't fit in? Why don't you have a one piece or a two piece long runner intake manifold on there? The car's hooked up. It's an on off switch. If you're feathering the throttle, you need a better chassis setup. Okay. I want the slant six that the engine power guys built. Big block numbers there. Wasn't tuned for 25. Was aiming for 18 that day. Missed it by that much, huh? I can't wait to do. In fact, I was talking to Nick with the van, and he built some trigger wheels. So I'm going to try running some more Dodge stuff. And I want to show, I mean, we already know what's going to happen, but I want to show the log style intake manifold. Like I want to show the draw through turbo thing, the throttle body size and stuff, and the non-intercooled versus intercooled, but also show the thing that I'm most interested in. There are two things. One is the log style early T1 intake manifold versus the one piece and two piece longer runner intake manifolds to show the difference between the runner length. I mean, we kind of know what's going to happen, but just want to show that so people understand. And then I also have a, was it Turbos Unleashed or something? I have one of those exhaust manifolds so we can compare the stock one to that. Bigger turbos, obviously. But most guys want to see a head change. They want to see the swirl head versus the bathtub head. So I kind of want to do that test to see what's going on. eBay T04E will boost 35 pounds. On the Sentra motor? I have both one piece and two piece, like the draw through stuff better on the street. Okay. Interesting. So is there do you have no intercooler on the draw through one? Or have you put an intercooler somewhere after the turbo to make that work? Because obviously non-intercooled would not be as good as intercooled. And then I think you're going to be surprised when we do the intake test, because the longer runner intake should be better everywhere. Yes, 2.5 front mount. Okay, that's good. And what size do you don't have a stock throttle body in front of the turbo, right? You have something bigger than that, I assume. Because I would think that would be restrictive. That's one of the things that we were going to try too, is just put a bigger, just make something and put a bigger throttle body on there. Because then, why restrict the airflow going into it? That's all good stuff though. I like it. I'm liking it. Got 1 minute left. 3.3 throttle body. Yeah, that's a common one. I was thinking 4.6, 5 liter or 6 liter LS throttle body on there. Might be a little touchy, but it won't be restrictive. That's for sure. So before we go, shout out to the guys at BTR and Vortec and Airflow Research. And here comes Bruno. What are you doing? All the guys, thanks for helping out. Next week, I'm going to hopefully, maybe I'm going to try to talk to the guys from Monster and see what's going on there. Come on, baby. What are you doing? Did you have fun swimming today? I did. Oh, that was awesome. Okay. Want the LS, also want the idle though, yeah. My cheap T3, T4 deal is a lot of boost creep. Internal wastegate was ported, but the 5 PSI spring is creeping up to 9. Yeah, internal wastegates can be problematic. External ones are nice. We'll have to see how much turbo we can put on that. I was talking to somebody that was putting like a GT35 on one. I'm like, whoa, it's like a party turbo. That's going to be fun. Blow-off valve's a good idea, obviously, always. But I don't know that. Do you need the blow-off valve on a draw-through? I think it'd be worth the money to use a higher-M intercooler like TIC versus piping and routing a frontman. I don't know what you're talking about with the money thing. Are you using a front-mounted air-to-air or air-to-water? An air-to-water is going to be better as long as you get, a good source of water. I don't know what you're doing with the vehicle, so it'd be hard for me to tell you which one of those I would choose. My uncle and I used to build, my stepdad used to build dirt track inline 6-cylinders, 300 horsepower. Were they Chevys? Like, were they 292s? Air to air versus air to water. Phil and Tina, I'm working on that. I'm editing that video now. In fact, I'm about 3/4 of the way done with it. It should be up tomorrow. Bathtub head's better, but less calibration options. I want to see that. I want to see for myself what it actually does. I don't know about there's a number of things that are happening there that you have a different head design, a different chamber design, different ports, I guess. You also have to change the camshaft too, because they're different cams. One's a roller and one's a slider, if I remember right, for those two heads. So there's a bunch of things that are happening there that are not cylinder head related. And then one of them may be more or less detonation sensitive than the other one. There's a lot of things going on there. I'm late in the chat. What's the benefits of using air to water versus air to air? Well, the major benefit from air to water is that you have better thermal mass than air to air. So you can put ice water in it and you could get the temperature down below what ambient is, which is the best that you could do at air to air. Get the 625 bathtub and big ports. I have some ported heads already. I'm not trying to build a motor to go fast or whatever. I'm interested in testing both stock heads against the other on the same combination. So there's actually data out there when somebody says, oh, this one's better. I've not seen anybody test them back to back. I've seen no data like that available. I've heard and read people tell me that one is better than the other, but they've never been able to give me information where they ran it on the dyno and then took the other one off and put the other one on and ran it on the dyno and made a conscious effort to make that cam the same. Because I'd like to test a slider versus a roller cam just to see what that changes, but I'd want to make sure that the lobes were as close as we could get. I mean, ramp rates and things like that on a roller cam versus a slider cam, like a hydraulic cam or a flat tap cam or whatever you want to call it, is not going to be the same. And so the cam is going to be different. So I would just like to see, I just want the data on all that. And again, I'm not interested in flow numbers. I flow tested them, but I want to see what that translates to in power. When Porsche had air-cooled race cars, they had air-to-water intercoolers. Then they had water-cooled race cars and gave them air-to-air intercoolers. Yeah. Lost a deal today in 4th gen complete motor, 6-liter, 823 heads, intake injectors, and throttle body for $400. Yeah, that is a good deal. So you're pertinent. You're saying somebody did. I mean, we scoured the internet. The guys from the car farm and I scoured the internet to try to find somebody that actually did a real back-to-back test, and I haven't found it anywhere. I've had guys that said, "Oh yeah, I ran this combination with this head, and then 2 years later or whatever, ran this combination and did this, and we ran it on the same dyno." I'm like, that's not a test. That's 2 years later, and obviously things have changed. So what I want to see is run it, take it off, run it, and then tell me what it did. And then you got to run. Like I'd want to see the test. Actually, the ideal test would be I want to see them run that NA and tell me what the difference is NA. Then I want to see it run under boost. Because here's the other problem is if a guy did it on a chassis dyno, all bets are off. See way too many differences on chassis dynos. I want to see them run it NA back to back. And then I want to see them run it at the same boost, at the same timing, the same air intake temperature, same oil temperature. All that has to be the same. And it's really hard to do. It's very, very hard to do. On that note, it is time to go. I just want more data. That's all. That's all I'm asking. More data, 1 a week. That's all I'm asking. But on that note, I will see you guys all tomorrow, and I will have the video up tomorrow on the tests with the throttle body stuff on the Trailblazer SS.